Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Data Dialogue conversation, which is part of a research series hosted by the Association for Enterprise Opportunity. Today, we are celebrating the release of our latest report, Seizing Opportunities: How Small Businesses Lead in Sustainability and Inclusion. Today, we are also excited to share a brand new supplemental handout. To kick things off, it is my pleasure to introduce AEO's President and CEO, Natalie Madeira-Cofield.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, and good afternoon to everyone. It's my pleasure that I welcome you to today's webinar, where we will be diving into some truly impactful research, our report, Seizing Opportunities: How Small Businesses Can Lead in Sustainability and Inclusion, which was first released in July in partnership with Wells Fargo, and is a brand new supplemental handout that we're excited also to share with you today. As Lori mentioned, my name is Natalie Madeira-Cofield, and I serve as the President and CEO for the Association for Enterprise Opportunity, the leading voice for entrepreneurship and small business in the United States. Daily, AEO works to ensure that we're providing innovative programming, research, advocacy, and creating convenings that bring together national thought leaders to discuss topics and issues that are particular and germane to the small business economy in the United States. As we talk about today's conversation, for which you'll hear from 6 incredible leaders from across the country and our very own team members who are very instrumental in authoring this research, I want to just first frame why this research matters in the first place. This comprehensive study explores the intersection of sustainability and innovation, and more importantly, it outlines how small businesses, especially diverse-owned businesses, can not only adapt, but also lead in this evolving landscape. In recent years, we've seen a significant shift across industry toward integrating sustainable and inclusive practices into business strategies. The shift is driven by various factors, from the need to mitigate national disasters to changing customer preferences, as well as regulatory demands and investor pressures. And these shifts just continue to move forward. Our research, and what you'll hear from our speakers and experts today, is really about focusing on how these trends uniquely affect small businesses, which are the backbone, as we all know, of our local and national economy. These businesses play a vital role in fostering a more equitable and resilient future, and in understanding how sustainability and inclusion impact them is very important, especially when you consider that 96% of US businesses have fewer than 10 employees. What makes this research and paper and its supplemental toolkit so significant is its focus on underexplored areas of how corporate sustainability and inclusion strategies affect small businesses. Beyond identifying challenges, we've also provided some action items and some action insights for stakeholders to help small businesses navigate an increasingly sustainable economy. And not just small businesses, but also the organizations that serve them. And that kind of leads me to how this research is aligned to AEO's mission. This research is a core function of the work that AEO does, and it's a cornerstone to our work of a missioned work of creating economic opportunities for underserved entrepreneurs and small businesses. It highlights why it's essential to protect their ability to operate and to thrive by aligning with corporate sustainability goals, giving them a competitive advantage in a growing and increasingly competitive global marketplace. As we move forward, this research opens the door for even more exploration. It underscores the need for ongoing support and capacity building to ensure that small businesses can meet emerging expectations around sustainability and inclusion. And I encourage, as you'll hear from our experts today, all of you to join us in seizing this opportunity to ensure that small businesses are not just participants, but they are leaders in this new era. I'd like to start also by saying that I want to take a moment to extend our immense gratitude to Wells Fargo, whose generous support has made this research possible. Their commitment to fostering inclusive and sustainable business environments is commendable, and we're grateful for their partnership. You will also hear remarks from them during today's webinar. And with that, I'd like to actually transition to sponsor remarks by introducing a colleague, Christopher Johnson, who will share opening remarks on behalf of Wells Fargo. Following his remarks, we will hear hear from AEO Senior Research Associate Chelsea Maxwell, who will provide a brief presentation of AEO's research findings. Christopher, thank you again for being here and for your unwavering support of AEO.
Thank you, Natalie. That was a great intro. Appreciate it. And good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Wells Fargo, I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to participate in and support today's event. As Natalie mentioned, my name is Christopher Johnson. I work for the Wells Fargo Foundation's Small Business Growth Philanthropy team, where I manage a portfolio focused on product and innovation. In that role, we invest philanthropic capital in nonprofit and community partners to support programs that help drive small business success, primarily by enabling access to capital, capacity building, and networking support. Looking more broadly, at Wells Fargo, we understand that small businesses are the backbone of our economy, driving innovation, job creation, and community development. And across the bank, we are committed to investing in initiatives that empower small business owners to thrive, especially those in underserved communities. For us, sustainability and inclusion are not just buzzwords. They represent critical pathways and opportunities for creating long-term, resilient businesses that can compete in a rapidly evolving marketplace. The research you'll be hearing about today reflects Wells Fargo's belief that small businesses have the potential to lead the way in adopting the types of sustainable and inclusive practices that ultimately help build stronger communities while simultaneously improving their own bottom line. The Seizing Opportunities report provides actionable insights that can help small businesses overcome barriers to sustainability and inclusion while offering real, practical solutions to business growth. This project highlights not just challenges, but opportunities for business owners to gain a competitive edge by implementing sustainable practices and embracing diversity. We've been proud to partner with AEO to make this research possible and contribute to the development of resources that help small businesses succeed in an increasingly competitive environment. This report is just one part of our larger commitment to supporting growth, particularly for diverse-owned and underserved businesses, ensuring they have the tools and resources they need to flourish. As we look ahead, I encourage everyone here to both read and take full advantage of the findings in this report, whether you're a small business owner, a supporter of entrepreneurship, or part of the larger ecosystem driving small business success. Together, we can seize these opportunities and work towards a more sustainable and inclusive economy for all. And with that, I'll turn it back over to the program team, and really looking forward to hearing today's program. Thank you.
Thank you, Christopher. You've been a great partner with us throughout this research, so thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chelsea Maxwell, and I'm a Senior Research Associate here at AEO. Today, I have the pleasure to share the findings of research AEO has spent the last 2 years working on and recently published in our report, Seizing Opportunities: How Small Businesses Can Lead in Sustainability and Inclusion. I want to start today by building off of what Natalie's already shared and addressing why we conducted this research and why it's important. There is a general desire and will globally, nationally, and locally to become more environmentally sustainable and socially inclusive. We see this interest coming from corporations, governments, consumers, and business owners themselves, as our research confirmed. And this all comes together to present a unique opportunity and moment for small businesses to lead in creating a more equitable and resilient economy. Small businesses, particularly businesses that are diverse-owned and the smallest of small businesses, are often overlooked when it comes to sustainability initiatives. Yet 99% of businesses in the US are considered small businesses, and 96% of all businesses are micro-sized businesses, meaning they have fewer than 10 employees. These businesses are crucial to local economies and are often key contributors to corporate supply chains. Sustainability and inclusion cannot just be about large corporations making changes. Small businesses, especially, are vital players in building a more sustainable and inclusive future. However, as we'll discuss today, they also face navigating market. Some businesses have small businesses have the agility and innovation needed to implement change, but they also need support to overcome barriers like access to capital, knowledge, and technical expertise. We undertook this research to understand these challenges and to identify how small businesses can be empowered to seize the opportunity of this moment. We believe that small businesses can, and in many ways do, lead in sustainability and that by engaging this research and turning this research into action, we can create more equitable opportunities, ultimately fostering a resilient, inclusive economy. Now, before I jump into the key findings, I'd like to give you a brief overview of how we gathered our insights. As part of our comprehensive study, we surveyed 505 small businesses from a wide range of industries and regions across the US. We wanted to capture a broad picture of what small businesses, especially diverse-owned ones, are experiencing in today's landscape. We also conducted in-depth interviews with key stakeholders. We talked to small business owners, business support organizations, including CDFIs, corporate supplier representatives, and corporate strategists. These conversations gave us valuable firsthand insights into the challenges and the opportunities that small businesses face in the market. Additionally, we took a close look at corporate environmental, social, and governance, or ESG, related commitments. We wanted to understand what specific commitments are being made and how they are shaping the business landscape, especially for smaller suppliers. This approach unveiled a wide swath of insights on the challenges and the opportunities that small businesses encounter as they navigate sustainability trends and corporate expectations. So now let's go over the 5 key findings that our report delves into. First, there is ample research that supplier diversity programs benefit both small businesses and corporations. But as many of us are aware of, they are also under increasing scrutiny due to legal challenges. Despite this, our research pointed to supplier diversity remaining a critical part of corporate supply chain strategies. Second is that environmental sustainability is on a trajectory that may lead it to no longer being optional. In fact, many corporations currently expect or encourage their suppliers to be working on their environmental impact and learning to communicate their efforts and results. Corporations aren't expecting perfection, particularly for their smallest suppliers at the moment, but small businesses need to prepare for this reality. Third, we found that this trajectory is not a cause for panic. Many small businesses are already taking steps to reduce their environmental impact and even engage in social and community initiatives. The caveat is that these efforts are often fragmented and more support is needed. This connects with our next finding, which is that small businesses often share the same sustainability and inclusion values as their corporate partners. There's alignment here. The difference is that they lack the resources to figure out things like formal reporting and compliance requirements. Finally, our report dives into that there is a growing need for business support organizations, corporations, and policymakers to step in and provide the technical assistance and resources necessary to help small businesses. One specific opportunity for the ecosystem is to help small businesses identify ways to reduce their resource footprints and learn to measure and communicate their efforts. Now I want to dive in a little bit closer and look at the data informing these findings. So many corporations have set and are setting ambitious goals related to ESG, including reducing greenhouse gas emissions, transitioning to renewable energy, and increasing diversity within their workplace and supply chains. These goals are all critical to building a more sustainable future. However, there is a gap between the goals that corporations are making and what diverse-owned small business owners think corporations are focused on. According to our research, only 30% of diverse-owned small businesses were even familiar with the concept of ESG before participating in our survey. In contrast, 68% of the larger small businesses we surveyed, so these are the businesses with 10 to 499 employees, reported that they were familiar with ESG. This gap's a real challenge. Many small businesses are simply unaware of the specific sustainability and diversity commitments their corporate partners are focused on. If they don't understand these priorities, then they miss out on opportunities to align with corporate goals, set themselves apart in the market, and secure contracts. Despite this knowledge gap, we find that small businesses are already taking meaningful steps. Our research shows that 62% of small businesses are actively working to reduce their environmental impact, and 44% are engaged in social initiatives such as supporting their local communities or promoting employee well-being. These numbers are promising, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Small businesses, particularly those that are historically underserved, need support to continue making progress and scaling their efforts. And this is where our ecosystem plays a crucial role. To address the challenges that may hold small businesses back from realizing their full potential, we need to think about the role of the broader small business ecosystem, including corporations, policymakers, and business support organizations. We need to think about what they can do separately and think about how we can all collaborate together meaningfully as well. To help frame the upcoming panel conversation, I want to highlight that our research confirmed 3 key ways that small businesses want support in tackling these issues. First, financial incentives and tax breaks. For example, governments and corporations can offer incentives to help small businesses absorb the upfront cost of becoming more sustainable. Second, access to resources and best practices. So one thing that business support organizations and corporations can do is find ways to provide guidance on the measuring and the reporting of resource footprints. And third, networking and collaboration opportunities. Our research team has heard time and again from entrepreneurs that being a business owner can be lonely, even professionally isolating, and that they are almost always eager to connect with other business owners. To this end, our ecosystem can create more opportunities for small businesses to network and learn from peers, helping them grow and adapt as we all work towards a more sustainable and inclusive future. Small businesses, especially diverse-owned ones, are at a critical juncture. They have a unique opportunity to lead in sustainability and inclusion, but they cannot do it alone. With the right combination of support, including financial resources, technical assistance, and peer learning, these businesses can gain a competitive market advantage and edge while contributing to a more sustainable future. To read more about AO's research and insights, please read our Seizing Opportunities report. Additionally, as both Lori and Natalie have mentioned, we're excited to release a supplemental handout today. Both of these resources are available at research.aeoworks.org. Now, I'm delighted to transition us to a dynamic panel discussion, delving more into these themes. Joining me in this discussion, we welcome Tynesha Boyer Robinson, President and CEO of CapEQ, an entrepreneur, technologist, and author who helps businesses achieve their true potential through social impact. Laura Bryce, CEO of Halstead and Holden LLC, who is a leader in sustainability and innovation, dedicated to building resilient, sustainable, and environmentally responsible corporations. Donna Gambrell, President and CEO of Appalachian Community Capital, a leader in the CDFI industry, responsible for attracting and directing investments to mission-driven and community-focused lenders in Appalachian communities. Pauline Jabon, Senior Vice President of Constituent Engagement and Services at the National Minority Supplier Development Council, who has over 20 years of experience as a supplier diversity executive. And Coles Jennings, Director of Corporate Sustainability at the Climate Community Collaborative, who brings 15 years of engineering experience to inform his current work, helping organizations reduce their resource footprints. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Now, to start off, I want to discuss the current corporate environment. Laura, you have extensive experience leading corporations toward more environmentally responsible and sustainable practices. Why have sustainability and inclusion commitments been so prominent in corporations over the last few years? What's driving these?
Great question. And it's a timely question. This week is New York Climate Week. And I mention that because the conversations that are playing out across the city are a good example of the interconnectedness of large corporations, small businesses, entrepreneurs when it comes to sustainability. Large corporations have, as you've mentioned, have made commitments to be more sustainable, to reduce the carbon footprint of their operations and the products that they sell. And there's pressure, increasing pressure from regulators and investors and consumers that they make these targets. And at New York Climate Week, which has been going on for over a decade, these major brands come together with world leaders, regulators, nonprofits, innovators, and entrepreneurs to discuss how they're doing against those targets and what more needs to be done. And this year's theme is "It's time." And so I think that you can derive from that it's acknowledgement of the urgency that corporations are feeling to meet their targets. And how does that interact with small businesses? Well, Coca-Cola or Nike or Walmart or any other large brand cannot meet their decarbonization targets without the support of their suppliers. So they're dependent on their suppliers. That's because the majority of Walmart's footprint is in their supply chain. So for the purposes of this, I'll mention scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. You don't have to know what those are, other than to know that scope 1 and scope 2 are the emissions that an organization has direct control over. So it's the energy that they use. And so whether that's fossil fuels or renewables and solar or wind, but everything else is scope 3, and that's the majority of their carbon footprint. And they cannot reduce their own carbon footprint without the help of their suppliers. So take Walmart, for example. So all of the products on their shelves, the shelves themselves, all of the packaging they use, that is part of their carbon footprint. And so they have to rely on their suppliers. And so sustainable businesses, as you mentioned, especially sustainable small businesses, are starting to have a competitive advantage. They're becoming the suppliers of choice because that helps in this larger ecosystem to reduce the carbon footprint of the larger corporations. And right now, it can be a competitive advantage, but it also can slowly start to become the requirement and the expectation. Let me give you an example. Apple used to give preference for suppliers that use renewable energy. Now it's actually a requirement for them to use renewable energy. And you mentioned financing, and you think, these requirements may lock out some of these smaller businesses because they don't have the expertise or they don't have the financing to make some of these changes. Well, these brands are recognizing that. H&M, the retailer, set up a multi-million-dollar fund to help many of its suppliers with their green projects. So that could be evolving their operations to electrical or renewable sources, developing or switching to low impact materials. And as you mentioned, in addition to corporate incentives, there are also state and local and other government incentives that I think we're going to hear about today.
So why are corporate, I mean, you've touched on this, but why should small businesses be paying attention to corporate strategies and priorities? I mean, how do you see these environmental and social commitments impacting small businesses? Are there opportunities here for them?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll say 2 reasons. One, maybe 3 reasons. First, as you mentioned, it is going to become more of a requirement for companies, small businesses to get contracts with larger companies and even government agencies that they are able to show that they are sustainable, that they have sustainable business practices, and that they have the data to support that. So that traceability of that data is very important for a number of reasons. And larger businesses are looking for, so let's just take it away from the reporting and the regulations that are coming, and that will flow down to the small businesses. But large corporations are also looking for innovative ways to make their own products more sustainable and to reduce waste. They are increasingly looking to small business entrepreneurs, innovators, to really come up with ideas to help them make their products more sustainable. That could be sustainable packaging options, that could be looking at alternatives for plastic or leather, that could be incorporating more plant-based materials in their products. Let me give you an example. So Nike just launched, and they announced this on a session that I was in on Monday at Climate Week, the Nike Recreation Program. And this is a program that's taking discarded Nike apparel, and they're collecting it. And then they're partnering with local designers and the community and manufacturers in the community to redesign, create new designs, and manufacture that material in a new way in these local communities. And so it's locally manufactured, local designers, collected locally, and it's going back into the economy and keeping these products out of the landfill and helping to ignite the circular economy in these communities.
It's great. What an exciting program as well. I'm curious to see how small businesses will be able to engage and leverage that opportunity. I do want to open this up to, the whole panel, and think about, as we're having this conversation about the current corporate environment, what other specific trends do you think that small businesses need to be aware of, and how can they start proactively aligning themselves to benefit from these evolving expectations?
I can jump in quickly. I just wanted to kind of build on the example that Laura provided, thinking about the circular economy. I'm definitely seeing a trend where being green is a business all of its own, especially at the local level. Thinking here in my hometown in Charlottesville, Virginia, a pretty small city, but we've had this really cool and increasingly robust community of circular economy businesses that have sort of glommed onto each other. So we have a plaza around the corner from where I'm standing that has a refill store where you can bring, containers and refill household products. And then you can walk down to the used outdoor gear store. There's a few, fashion boutiques, reused thrift stores. There's even a craft reuse store. So none of that was really around 20 years ago. So just to see, I think that's a testament to, consumer demand, and certainly, just it's in the ethos that folks are looking for ways to kind of engage in a more circular economy, reduce their waste. And I think, it's kind of coming from both sides. So it's really interesting to observe, hear about that project from Nike, and also just tie into what I'm seeing at more kind of grassroots, community level trends.
And Chelsea,
Chelsea,
go ahead.
oh, I'm sorry.
No,
No,
go ahead, Donna.
I was going to say that certainly I think you see in this new green economy an opportunity for small business involvement, again, at the supplier level, all the way up to small business ownerships. We have a great example, especially when we look at the energy efficiencies that can benefit small businesses. A great example of an IGA grocery store owner in Eastern Kentucky that had just rising utility costs. And by putting on just solar panels on her store, was able not only to reduce her utility costs, but also that gave her enough savings to hire an additional 10 employees. And when you think about that type of savings, it really is phenomenal, and it's an opportunity, I think, for small businesses, small business owners, to get even more engaged, and for all of us. Frankly, this is a new industry for us, for most of us, and so there is a place for small business owners in this new space as well.
And I would only add to that, agree with what everyone is saying, but would add to that small businesses really need to keep their fingers on the pulse, because at NMSDC, we connect minority businesses with major corporations, with buying entities. And quite often, these small minority businesses get involved or invited to the table after the opportunities are on the market. And at that time, quite honestly, it's too late, because it's too late for the minority businesses to create the solutions. We know that these small minority businesses are agile, they're flexible, they can respond to needs, but they've got to have some, some lead time to do that. And so one of the things that we do here at NMSDC is we look at where the opportunities are coming. We have over 1,700 corporations who are members of the organization. We meet with them quite often to find out what are the emerging trends, what are the things that you are going to be looking for within your supply chain, within your organization. And we take that information and build developmental capacity building programs for minority businesses, for small businesses, so they can start thinking about BP as an example, wanting to be neutral, be carbon neutral. Well, what are the opportunities? Electrical vehicles. What are the opportunities that are going to be coming up that small businesses need to prepare for? So we really encourage our corporations to bring those opportunities to light to NMSDC so that we can offer them to small businesses. So the one thing I would say, small minority businesses really need to keep their fingers on the pulse on what's happening. And if we're not bringing it to you, then you need to bring it to us so we can help you create those solutions.
Helene, I want to pick up on that thread. And Donna, you started this too, and just continue honing in on environmental sustainability. Kohl's, your organization, C3, is confronting climate change and catalyzing climate action at a local level. Why do you see small local businesses as necessary to your strategy addressing climate change?
So C3 started in 2017, around the time we saw a big wave of local governments and jurisdictions making emissions reduction pledges. Folks will recall after the 2016 election, the federal landscape for climate and sustainability policy really shifted. And so we saw a big movement towards the local level of, 2030 pledges, 2050 net zero, things like that. In order to meet these goals, the participation of local businesses is really, really essential. And there's really three key reasons for that. And the categories I like to highlight are impact, opportunity, and trust. From an impact perspective, we heard in the lead up that 96% of businesses in the US are 10 employees or less. A stat I really like to use is that between 45 and 50% of our GDP is from small and mid-sized businesses. So, Laura correctly talked about all the pressure on the large corporations because they do make up half the economy. And because there's a smaller number of them, each individual corporation has a huge responsibility to act. But in the aggregate, small businesses, again, about half the economy, incredibly important if we're going to meet these goals, especially at the local level. When you zoom in a metro area, the composition may be even greater depending on where you are. Opportunity, Donna, you said the perfect example, which is a family-owned grocery store is able to go solar and hire more employees. So I couldn't have said it better myself in terms of we don't want to live in an economy, in a world where only the largest corporations have benefited from a clean energy transition, right? That's just going to widen the resource gaps. It's going to widen the knowledge gaps. We really want small businesses, especially underserved businesses, to be able to leverage and take advantage of clean energy, energy efficiency, electric vehicles, all of these things that require capital and are not necessarily quote unquote easy to do. But once you've done them, they're very self-sustaining and they can be very, very supportive of the bottom line of your business. There's also secondary benefits. So not just direct return on investment, but customer retention, employee retention. I always harp on some recent survey data from the younger two generations in the workforce. They're hyper-focused on finding and staying with employers with sustainable and climate commitments, and they can see through the greenwashing. So it really needs to be substantial and committed. And then the last theme that I'll highlight is trust. So we work at the local level. I've been doing this for just 3 years now, so I'm still kind of getting to know the workings of local government. But climate and sustainability action is often requires really thorny, complex local solutions. So we're talking about how do we build our communities in a sustainable way where We're not sprawling to the cheapest acres, but we're able to densify our communities. We can build more housing where people can live where they work. We don't have long car commutes. Maybe we don't need more cars on the road at all. These are really local issues, right? Zoning ordinances, transportation system planning, housing funding and development. So these are not the things that large corporations get involved in. These are local issues, and we really need local voices, especially from the business community, as part of solving those things. So a little bit of survey data I like to highlight. There was a survey here in Virginia, the Community Engagement Index, and they asked this question about who do you trust to act on local community issues. Local businesses came in at the top, 65% compared to 25% versus corporations. So not only is there this need to act in the aggregate, right? We don't need to put pressure on any one small business, but as a community, there needs to be action. But there's this opportunity to really be a powerful voice. I think you can even kind of zoom in within communities, right? When we talk about underserved communities, business voices, business owners in those communities can really help step up on these issues and make sure that their communities, within a larger metro area are themselves being served and considered.
Thank you for highlighting those. It really struck me how you doubled down on something that Donna had said, where highlighting the financial opportunity here for small businesses. I think that often gets lost in this conversation when there's, this feels like a really difficult conversation to walk into, right? As a small business owner, even as a business support organization, like the startup knowledge and technical expertise feels high. It feels intimidating. And our research really found that there's a pretty substantial knowledge gap. Particularly with the smallest of small businesses. You've highlighted some great benefits and why this work with local businesses is so important. What do you see as the role of business support organizations in bridging those knowledge gaps and preparing small businesses for a sustainable economy?
Yeah, so I think we really already touched on two of my three responses there. The first is capital. And I'm not going to step on Donna. I'm going to let her dig into that. But there's an obvious need for targeted capital for these solutions. Again, solar power is an easy one to think about. It's expensive. It has a long return on investment. So it's a hard thing for a small business to navigate. Luckily, we have programs that can direct capital specifically to those kinds of applications, whereas otherwise a business may not be able to secure it. Education, as you mentioned, Chelsea, is huge. It is, just saying the word ESG, if you know what it is, it can be incredibly paralyzing. Talking about emission scopes can be incredibly paralyzing. You really don't know where to start. So personally, I think a great approach is for BSOs to find the right partners. They're all over the place. If C3, obviously, if you happen to be in a Virginia city, call us. But we're part of a network called the Green Business Engagement National Network that kind of brings these green business support, educators and activators together, across many different states and localities. So chances are there's somebody in your area that is willing to come in, do workshops, do education, and really help catalyze some of this. And then the last thing is collaboration. You mentioned the loneliness of being a small business owner, the loneliness of being a small business owner trying to engage in sustainability and climate, like kind of adding that to your already, hefty weight on your shoulders. It can add a lot. So just connecting with folks that are like-minded in the spirit of, man, I don't really know what I'm doing. Can you, have you guys tried this? Hey, we talked to this recycling, but he needs a commitment from 20 different businesses. There's some strength and potential like shared purchasing, shared services there as well. So we've seen a lot of benefits in just bringing green-minded businesses together, regardless of sector, and just having them talk to each other and learn from each other.
It's really powerful. And so what I'm hearing is that one first step that BSOs can take is finding a partner in their area to come talk to them about what they're doing. Does that land well?
Yeah, I think it's really important. And While I love contractors, I would encourage for them to be a later step in that process. So I think it's really important to have governmental or nonprofit partners that are really just mission focused and want to see solutions implemented before you bring in, say a solar contractor or someone who, while they may be of similar mind, have something to sell.
Well, Coles, you also set us up well then to, transition to Donna. Donna, you lead the Appalachian Community Capital. And that organization, your organization is launching the Green Bank for Rural America, which aims to address sustainability challenges in rural communities. Could you share more about this initiative and how it will support small businesses in adopting sustainable practices?
I sure can, Chelsea, and thank you again for the question, because this is something that I am so excited about as we continue to see more federal funding coming into areas like Appalachia and other rural communities across the country. It's really been quite phenomenal. I'll just start by saying this. The Appalachian Regional Commission is a quasi-federal organization that serves the entire region within Appalachia, and that's all of West Virginia and portions of 12 other states, starting at the bottom portion of New York and going all the way to the top portion of Mississippi. They've been around since the early 60s, and their primary purpose really is to help build the infrastructure within the region, whether it's water and sewage, whether it's housing, whether it's small businesses. They've been one of our strongest supporters as well at Appalachian Community Capital. We are a certified community development financial institution, or CDFI, a nonprofit lender. There are 1,500 CDFIs across the country. We happen to be an intermediary CDFI serving the Appalachian region. Those 13 states comprised of 423 counties, 26 million people, 20% of the population identifies as people of color. And what I was most struck by the Appalachian Regional Commission most recently is that they issued a new study. They had done a study, about 10 years ago about small business credit needs. And this newest study that came out was done in conjunction with Next Street, and it's titled Access to Capital and Credit for Entrepreneurs and Small Businesses in Appalachia. So what ARC has identified is just in Appalachia alone, those 13 states, about 2.4 million small businesses operate in the region. 99% of all Appalachian businesses are considered small businesses. $70 billion of that is about the average annual amount of unmet capital needs. So we know the demand is great. And we know that small businesses, as Coles has already said, are the anchors of so many communities. They're job creators. They're the ones that are bringing in additional investments in the community. We got involved because EPA issued an announcement for a greenhouse gas reduction fund last October. $27 billion, that's with the B, billion dollars would be going to several organizations, community lenders, community-based organizations to work in the hardest hit communities across this country. And by hardest hit, those are the ones that are coal impacted, the energy communities, low income, communities of color, tribal lands, really to work within those communities to identify renewable energy projects that could be financed and that would lead not only to healthier communities, but would also create jobs, save money for the residents in those communities. So Appalachian Community Capital threw its hat in the ring after we looked at all the criteria and said, holy cow, we're doing all of this already. We're covering the geographic areas that were of most concern to EPA. We were very competitive, and in April of this year, received word from EPA that we were one of the 8 selectees to receive grant dollars from EPA. We are receiving $500 million that will be going into community lenders as grants. And so those community lenders are nonprofits, CDFIs, revolving loan funds. They can be USDA intermediary lending, IRPs, and others, including municipal entities that are also nonprofits. And basically what we will be doing is helping to build the capacity of those community lenders so that they are connecting the dots, that they are actually identifying through the feedback that's coming from the community itself, what the priorities are in their community. And it doesn't have to just be solar. So EPA has 3 categories that these funds are focused on. One is what they're calling the built environment. These can be new construction and redevelopment of commercial properties or residential properties, industrial properties, community facilities. That's one. Distributed energy is the second one. That's community solar, wind, energy storage. The third one is transportation, electric vehicles. Again, school buses, cars, trucks are also part of that category. And then business finance. These are energy efficient, renewable energy products and services that are supporting any or all of the above. And I think small businesses play a role in each of those categories. So basically what we did was to create a green bank for rural America, targeting all those areas that I talked about previously, tribal, low income, coal impacted communities, that also covers not that covers not only all of Appalachia, but also targeted rural communities across the United States. And we are working to make sure that those capital awards go out to those community lenders, that there are good projects that are either ready to go or in the pipeline, because again, this is a new industry. And so not everybody will be ready to go from day one. We want to make sure that those communities are ready, prepared, that they have the technical assistance and support that's needed, that the community lenders also have the kind of support that's needed. This green bank that's being stood up, we will be opening applications to the community lenders at the end of October, taking those applications in, reviewing and scoring and ranking them, of course, and then anticipate that in January, we will be announcing the first set of awards. From that point on, every quarter, we'll be announcing awards based on, again, that whole selection, review and selection process. Again, $500 million, the EPA has dictated that 90% of that funding, so that for us, it'll be $490 million is going out to those community lenders in those hardest hit communities. Chelsea, I think this is just so historical. First of all, that you have funding that's coming in to the community lenders that understand the communities, work in the communities, and that funding is going directly into those communities as well. But also the fact that, we're also targeting the hardest hit. These are communities that have been long overlooked, underserved, have missed opportunities. And I've often said to my team, we've got to get this right. This has to be done the right way, because if we don't do it, then there's a tremendous missed opportunity. And, people say, Donna, don't call this a once in a lifetime opportunity. But in many ways, it is a once in a lifetime. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity for me, because it's probably not going to be here 30 years from now. But hopefully what we do will have some impact for those communities going forward, and certainly for generations to come as well.
Absolutely. I'm a trained social worker, so this idea of, this federal funding targeting or going to community-led organizations just makes my heart sing, right? Like we're trusting the expertise of people who are living in these communities. And I think that's just it feels too rare in terms of how services get funded and are driven. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that this is like just a huge historic moment. Now I think I worry about a lot of communities like not being ready. So what would you say to like a BSO that's like, I don't know anything. What does, how might they still engage this the rural bank, or what would you say to them?
Yeah, no, there is so much information that is starting to come out, either through webinars, clearly everything that's on the website now. We're going into communities as well. We're setting up technical assistance hubs. These will be resources that will be available not only to the community lenders, but the public will have access so they'll understand the process as well. But one of the things that I have said too is that we have to do community engagement and outreach in a different way. I mean, we've gotten so used to doing it in a digital way and saying, well, if you just, press the button on your laptop, you'll find the information. And that works well in a lot of communities, but particularly in rural communities, you may not even have reliable access to Wi-Fi or broadband. And so we are working very closely with community organizations in the region that have been doing community engagement for decades and are doing it extraordinarily well. And that means that, we're going to have to go into people's homes and sit across the kitchen tables. We're going to be in houses of worship. We're going to be in schools and community centers, because I think that's the best way to get the community engaged and to talk about this in a way that really resonates. I mean, I think when we're among ourselves and we're doing this energy work, we can talk about decarbonization and reducing emissions. But when you're sitting around somebody who I grew up with in my neighborhood or my community, and you start talking like that, their eyes are gonna glaze over, because they're gonna say, what are you talking about? And so we really have worked even very closely with the communication specialists who work in Appalachia and rural communities, have brought them together and said, what's the best way to talk about this in a way that's going to resonate with community residents as well? And so that's why we talk about, saving utility costs and reducing, your electric bill and things like that, as opposed to the more technologically inspired language that comes out from the government.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What I'm hearing is, this coming back to trust, which Cole's highlighted earlier, and AAO has done a lot of work around trust and trust gaps, and just recognizing that technical assistance works best when there is that trusting relationship. It's great. So we could go on and on about environmental sustainability, but I want to pivot us and focus on supplier diversity and inclusion as well. Pauline, I'm going to turn to you. You're an established leader in supplier inclusion. You're someone who has a finger on the pulse, so to speak. Can you share what the latest developments in corporate supplier diversity initiatives you're seeing, and particularly, in a time when these programs are facing scrutiny?
Yeah, so thank you. And while the programs or corporations are being scrutinized on their diversity, equity type programs, we do still have a number of really large corporations who have not given in. And one of the reasons that they've not given in, years ago, the thought of supplier diversity was meeting a quota. It was putting a small group of minority businesses within your supply chain. It's no longer that. It's now a business imperative. And the reason it's a business imperative is because corporations, the consumers, quite honestly, want to do business with people who respect and who give back to their communities. And one of the ways that they do that is by looking at where is Nike, what is Nike investing in? What is Coca-Cola investing in? What are they doing with minority communities? Are they using minority suppliers? And if they're not, I've seen and heard people say, I'm not going to do business with you. I personally don't stay at one hotel brand because they don't support minority business inclusion. And so we're seeing this be a business imperative that works its way to shareholder value. Because if communities and minorities are not buying consumable products because they're not being supported, they feel they're not being supported, bottom line, shareholder value erodes. So that's one of the things that we're seeing. One of the other things that we're seeing is a shift from supply diversity being tied to procurement to now it being integrated within the organization. So many years ago, corporations had supply diversity goals built within procurement. And quite often, the large spend, so I spoke a little bit ago about getting in front of the opportunity. When the opportunity hits procurement, it's too late for for minority suppliers or small companies to participate. You need to get the suppliers in the door prior to. And in order to do that, you need to get to the lines of business. But for many years, supply diversity practitioners and supply diversity programs were held within procurement. We are seeing now a shift from supply diversity within procurement to within the business. So getting the lines of business involved. 2 years ago, NMSDC launched our Minority Business Economic Forum, and that was developed to really bring together the lines of business at the table, talking about the value of of minority business inclusion, small business inclusion. And we're seeing the benefit of that. We're seeing opportunities being discussed with minority suppliers, relationships being built, opportunities being given to minority businesses or small businesses to develop solutions. I talked about BP a little bit earlier. BP is one of those companies who came to NMSDC and said, we've got a goal to meet from a carbon neutral perspective. How could we get small businesses involved? And so one of the ways that those large companies are engaging with small minority businesses is by investing in developmental programs. And they do that through companies or organizations like NMSDC. They quite often don't go out and do the programs themselves, but they would invest in NMSDC so that we can bring the programs to our certified suppliers. And that really helps minority businesses in developing sustainable solutions, in looking at, they may be in one line of business, but it may take just a little bit of effort to get into another line of business that would have a viable solution for corporations. And it's through those developmental programs that NMSDC puts together with our corporate members that helps them to get into those lines of business and give them access to those opportunities.
Ty, you've helped numerous businesses and companies integrate social impact into their business models as well. I mean, so I see you sitting at the nexus of this conversation, right? When it comes to social impact, that's we're bringing it in together, this inclusion and other sustainability goals. Can you share a little bit about the businesses that you've worked with that have successfully leveraged supplier diversity initiatives to create impact while growing their business?
Absolutely. And one of the things I just want to highlight, and I think about Donna really did a great job of sharing the intersectionality of this work. When you think about capacity and capital required for businesses to grow, there's often a bifurcation when people think about ESG and they hear ESG, they think more of the E and they forget about the S and the G, but it's all connected. So environmental, social, and governance incorporates and includes DEI. And frankly, communities of color are often the ones who are most impacted by climate challenges. That's why there's such a push for climate justice. So an example I love to share when we're thinking about what that intersectionality looks like in practice is we worked really closely after Hurricane Katrina to help support the economic revitalization of that community in ways where local residents, but also their local companies were not only tapping into businesses, but also hiring local residents. And we know from AEO research that Black business owners are 12 times wealthier than their non-business owner peers, but also that they hire 1 in 5 Black people. And when you see a lot of those details and data replicated in communities of color and amongst women as well. And so what does it look like when you invest in supplier diversity in a way that is a trifecta? It's for the community, it is for the business, and it is for climate. And we saw that when we were working with the New Orleans Business Alliance Association when we came there post-Katrina and to support that work. So really working on research there that showed that people of color throughout New Orleans had access to the same opportunities, if they did, as white people, that the state would see an additional $7 billion in earnings and $20 billion in economic impact. And we know that communities of color were hit hardest by Katrina for all of the reasons that we mentioned before about climate justice. When we worked with them and invested in those businesses and invested in that community, what we saw was that the city was able to marry their hiring policy in combination with corporate hiring policy and supplier diversity in a way that increased wages from $7.25 to $10.10 an hour. And in fact, in 2021, it reached $15 an hour, but also to increase receipts and revenue in those communities who are often entrepreneurs run by businesses or people of color, that created 30,000 jobs in the last 10 years. It resulted in a 3 percentage point decrease in unemployment rates over the last 10 years. And then just in 1 year alone, in 2019, it resulted in $8.5 million in contracts awarded to entrepreneurs of color. And that is a perfect example of what it looks like to marry capital, capacity, and climate in a community. And one of the things that we push and whenever we're working with businesses is to share examples like that, because I think a lot of people feel overwhelmed and as a result of being overwhelmed, try to silo these issues. Oh, I either care about the environment or I care about diversity. And it's actually, no, you can address multiple things at once by being intentional about the outcomes and the investment in those communities. But it doesn't happen overnight. It takes intentionality, it takes collaboration, it takes coordination. But once you do that and do that well, it creates an economic flywheel of opportunity and climate justice within communities.
We've touched on a lot of different topics, right? This idea of ESG is so broad. It includes so many different components and pieces. One thing that we've all kind of also touched on is the importance of collaboration and partnership. So I want to transition us in our last 10 or so minutes to really talk about what collaborations do we, with all of our diverse perspectives, everyone on this panel is coming from a slightly different or like a unique, having a unique role in the ecosystem. What are the collaborations that you all see as necessary to support small businesses so that we can position them to really lead and continue leading in sustainability and inclusion?
Well, I can jump back in. I mean, another example that we have of a partner that we worked with is the Cincinnati Minority Business Accelerator. And I think it goes back to what Pauline said about if the contract is already out, it's usually too late. And it's usually because a variety of factors. So we'll assume goodwill and not go into all of those factors. One of the things I love about the Cincinnati Minority Business Accelerator model is the organization worked with the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies in their footprint and said, tell us which suppliers you have that are going through a leadership transition. And what are you buying from them? It can be anything from pins to planes, depending on what company that you're working with. How can we backfill proactively, recognizing that this transition might not happen for another 3 to 5 years? How can we backfill a lot of those opportunities with communities of color? Now that you've proactively come to the table with, we're going to think about a 3 to 5 year lead time, in parallel, you can start ramping up capacity building, providing training on what it looks like to build a sustainable organization, matching folks with the consultants that they need, helping them bid on contracts. And as a result, what we saw in that community is they increased receipts in the Cincinnati area with over $1 billion in revenue across 67 different companies. And I think that's something that is a mismatch that happens not only in supplier diversity, but when you think about social justice issues overall, we often come to the table after it's too late to actually really help support what it takes to have the lead time where the issue and the solution connect at the same time. It happens in workforce development, it happens in housing, it happens in entrepreneurship. And if we're really proactive and have a strategic outcome, i.e., these companies were going to lose suppliers that they relied on consistently, and come with a solution set that says, we can actually ease that transition for you. Now you're at the table, not as a supplicant, but as a partner. And it's collaborations like that where you're really aligning incentives and aligning outcomes that have the best results.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, we're in our lane and we think that we have to do everything for our suppliers within our ecosystem. And I think as we look at how do we leverage the strengths of everyone, we would be far better off in bringing a holistic solution to this age-old issue. I think, I listened to Donna and I'm thinking, well, we do a capital management, a managers program. We have a capital readiness program within NMSDC, but I absolutely see ways that I could collaborate with Appalachia and Donna to bring some of those solutions, because I don't have to create the programming for my certified suppliers. I can have you do that. And I think we need to look at ourselves as a community and leverage each other appropriately, having you in your swim lane and me in my swim lane, but bringing all those swim lanes together in one big Olympic swimming pool, and have us all succeed together. I think that's one of the things that we really need to be focused on.
Colleen, I couldn't agree with you more. And early on when we had not been selected yet, we were actually talking to the National Minority Suppliers Development Council. I was actually supposed to speak at a conference, and I had to decline because we just didn't know the status of our application yet. So I couldn't say much except what we hoped to do if we won the award. But with everybody on this panel today, I'm ready to collaborate with you, talk with you, talk about how we can partner. And Tanisha, I was actually living and working in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and I absolutely say amen to what you've said about the collaboration that occurred then. And I think that's so important. This is a big challenge. It's a big task we have in front of us, and it makes no sense for us to go. You've got 100 different organizations going in 100 different ways, but really doing the same thing and really having the same focus and the goal. So to the extent that we can collaborate, identify those areas where there's similarities and where there is cross-section and synergy, I say, let's do it. For me, one of the places is always going to be, especially for small businesses, workforce development piece, the additional certification and training that may be needed for some of those small businesses to get into this space, stay into the space. And then the other part of that is just the whole community empowerment piece later on. I mean, for so many of these communities, we've been consumers, but we need to flip that switch and talk about how do you then, in this next phase, make sure that the people in that community are not just the consumers, but the ones that are leading the projects, the ones that are managing the projects, the ones that are really ahead in terms of their own leadership within the community itself.
Chelsea, I'll add to that. I think, Donna and others have said the education and the helping to raise awareness. And so we don't need multiple different, training programs, but if we can come together and offer the education and training, that is going to help small businesses be more aware of what reporting requirements are going to flow down to them. It's going to help them be more aware of what to ask for of the companies that they want to do business with and get into the pipeline earlier. It's going to help them to have more knowledge of the financing that is available. And one of the things that really excites me as well is when we look at buyer data over the last 5 years, consumer buying habits have shown that consumers want to do business with socially and environmentally conscious businesses. And what's most exciting, considering that we're on a conversation about small businesses, is the growth of the most growth has been with small and private label companies, 59 to 80% growth in those companies that have sustainable claims or socially conscious claims on their products. Keep in mind that you need to be able to back up those claims. It can't just be a false claim. It has to be authentic. But we really are seeing consumers vote with their dollars and go to the small businesses over the large corporations that are local to their communities and are supporting the values that they hold near and dear. So that's really exciting.
I just want to add on, really appreciate that Tanisha brought up intersectionality. I think it's a great place to kind of tie this conversation full circle. And for my part, in terms of collaboration, I think I've emphasized a couple times already, collaborating with local government, being super important on some of these kind of local transformational issues. It reminds me of recent campaign of ours around transforming our local transportation system. Often it starts, especially, Tanisha, you mentioned like people zero in on the E, looking at, hey, how can we clean up our bus system? We're thinking, okay, battery vehicles, maybe hydrogen, like let's really make this a technical challenge. But once C3 partnered, with our local government and really started surveying the community, like, hey, what will get you excited about this? What do you want out of a public transportation system? I want the bus stops to be safe. I want the bus to show up on time. I want the routes to go where I need them to go to get to work. And so those are obvious things, right? But it becomes this much more fundamental social question and challenge of making a more reliable and safe transportation system before you can really aspire to clean it up. Because if no one's riding the bus, then who cares what it's running on, right? So I just thought that was a great way to kind of bring these issues together. Again, a lot of this happens at the local level, and businesses just really need to be a part of those conversations.
Thank you for tying that together for us, Coles. It sounds like there's a lot of opportunity here for partnership. I really appreciate the point that we don't need to recreate the wheel, that everyone has, or that our different organizations and our different areas of expertise can be leveraged together so that we can be more of a community in supporting small businesses. I want to take a moment and say thank you to all the panelists. Thank you so much, each of you, for sharing your valuable insights today. I found this conversation to be really energizing and enlightening. I also just want to say thank you to our attendees. On behalf of our team at AEO, we are so thankful for you tuning into this important conversation and discussion. Your engagement in our work and in this work collectively is key to driving forward the dialogue and action needed to meaningfully support small businesses across the country. As we wrap up today, I want us to look forward as well. I hope that you will all join us for AEO's next webinar as part of our Equity and Opportunity for All series. Next week on Thursday, October 3rd at 3 p.m. Eastern, we will be honoring National Hispanic Heritage Month and celebrating the contributions of Hispanic entrepreneurs. Please join us again for that event. And while you're at it, make sure that you're signed up to get our updates. At the conclusion of this webinar, please take 2 minutes to fill out the pop-up survey in your internet browser. And once again, thank you for your time and commitment to this vital work. We look forward to seeing you at future AEO events. Have a wonderful day.